Okay, so we're going to start first. We're just right into it, and we're first going to just start with microgreens and how to grow them. So with this system is we didn't design it to grow microgreens, so we didn't specialize in it. It is an add-on, so it's going to be a little bit more work. It's not like we designed it perfectly to make microgreens a little bit easier.
Yeah, like we would qualify it as advanced gardening, and that's just because it's not going to be something where you just sort of plug and forget. You're going to have to do a little bit extra work. Similar if you're growing vine plants, where we're talking about understanding different flowers and pollination. I would say microgreens is in the same territory where it's going to be a little bit more labor, and you have to pay attention to things. But we have successfully grown them. They grew extremely well, and the garden's very capable of doing it. But it would be something, again, we wouldn't recommend doing this like right off the hop. Get some familiarity with the hydroponics first.
Yeah, what he said. And so just with microgreens, they you can use anything from like leafy greens to herbs to grow microgreens. It's just that variety, and lots of it is more due to the maturity of the plant. So you're gonna have sprouts. There's seedlings, and that's just as soon as like there's the seed and the first kind of root pops out, people can harvest those, and then there's going to be the sprouts and then the microgreens, and then if you don't harvest them, they turn into plants. And so in that is there's no special seeds that you need. Lots of time with marketing, they go into like microgreen seeds. They're just regular seeds. They're just regular kale and regular radishes, whatever. They're just regular seeds. So yeah, you can do it like salad greens, herbs, any of those microgreens. With microgreens, the nicest thing is they're like any other plant. They like a pH of 6, so anywhere between 5.5, 6.5. They like that middle range. They do great with it. And with the system it is great. We'll just demonstrate it here. And so each system comes with them. Like if you got it from Kickstarter, is going to come with a Microgreen Starter Kit. And so you're going to get these
I guess we call them like nets, and they're basically designed to sit in place. I kind of can see it. Sorry, we'll get this. So it just sits right in place on the tray, and what that does is it's going to hold up your media. So you can use different media right now. The ones we're going to be providing you with are going to be hemp. That's what this one is. And it just sits on top of that netting. It's kind of hard to see. This is like, oh, it's going to be a challenge. But the way it's set up is just this netting keeps it so that the water can still flow underneath. So the rest of your system doesn't slow down in water, but it saturates this to the point where it can germinate all of your seeds for the microgreen. That's sort of the idea behind it.
Yeah, and once you have it in the tray, you're just going to kind of want to push down a little bit and get it where it's just a little bit moist on the top. And then that's when you're going to kind of put a carpet of seeds on this media. And then with microgreens is they do need darkness to sprout. So you're actually going to want to put your lid of the tray on top of this, and at least for 2, 3, 4 days.
And then cover the holes if you can, like a piece of cardboard
or a cup. Yeah, exactly. And then you're going to wait for 2, 3 days until they start sprouting, and then you're going to want to add turn on the light. After a couple days.
So you'd remove the lid and then turn the lights back on it. And when we did the microgreens, it was probably about 5 days, and we did one layer, and we had about 2 containers full of we did a kale. Sorry, it's hard. I keep getting backwards. We did a kale microgreen in about 2 days. We had 2 decent sized containers, 5 days, 2 decent sized containers full of the microgreen. So it isn't super difficult, but the problems could be like you don't want to be dropping any seeds and just letting them circulate in the system. You want to clean up things. You want to keep water moving. And if you don't do that, you could have some other issues. You might also have to help with, say, spritzing the seeds to get your germination or to guarantee it.
Yes. Alrighty. And so when you harvest your microgreens, there is going to be kind of 2 sets of microgreens. There's going to be one type that can regrow, and you can actually chop them, and then they're going to regrow. And then there's going to be some other ones, more like the herbs and that you just, it's a one and done kind of thing. And each time you harvest, most likely, if it's the one and done ones, is you're going to have to remove the media and replant with new media all over and repeat this process. But there is ones that do regrow, And yeah, so
Lost her mouse.
I lost my mouse.
And so it kind of depends on, I guess, what you prefer, because some people do prefer the ones that are kind of a one and done right from the root harvest.
Yeah, and then the ones that do regrow are going to be like peas, chickpeas, they're basil, sage, oregano. Those are the ones that regrow. And then they can regrow, I don't know, 2-3 times, but as you cut them and they regrow, they do not taste as like flavorful. And again, they're probably going to get bitter, and you're probably only going to want to do 1 or 2 times. So with harvesting, is like the first leaves you see is actually going to be the seed leaves, and then they don't look like the true leaves. The best time to harvest microgreens is when they develop the first set of true leaves, and that's just those little kind of tiny leaves. It takes about 10 days, 5 to 10 days, I would say. Hydroponics is a little bit faster, and that's why you can get away with the 5 to 10 day mark. And then something just really cool information.
That's the going full nerd on us.
So when you cut all the leaves off the plants, there's a chance of regrowth is slim to none. So if you are going to plant like a pea shoot in that and you want it to regrow, you're going to want to make sure that you cut it like you want to leave the leaves there. You don't want to cut it with all the leaves in and everything in place, because cutting the microgreens near the soil surface or the media surface, it minimizes the chance of the microgreens to regrow. And this is just because certain portions of the plant can create new plant tissues. So like lots of living organisms, plants grow through a combination of cell growth as well as cell division. So as plant cell grow, the cells, they actually become specialized. And once they become specialized, they no longer can divide and they kind of stop growing. And so they can't continue to keep growing. And so the really cool thing is like, so a key component of continual plant growth is called meristeme, and this can be defined as plant tissue that consists of cells that just keep dividing and they never specialize. They're always dividing and dividing, and because of this, these cells are actually going to be closest to this, like the stem, when the stem is on the surface of the soil. I'm gonna get through this, guys. The stem has lots of those near the soil, as well as the true leaves. If you cut it right above the true leaves, that's where lots of these cells are kind of positioned. And so if you cut too close to the media, all of a sudden you're getting rid of all these cells, and they no longer can reproduce, and they can no longer grow a new stem. Whereas with the true leaves, if you cut just above them, that allows the plant to photosynthesize, as well as these cells are present right there, and then they can reproduce and keep growing that stem and grow another growth. That makes more sense. I got there.
And then kind of when we were going back to the seed anatomy, is that it has an outside, which was the endosperm, which is what's feeding the plant for the lifetime of the germination till it can start a seed. So when you're doing microgreens, you're basically eating that nutrients. It's all the stuff that's been packed inside the seed. And so if you continually let it grow, eventually it's going to run out of that nutrients, which means you're going to start to see less flavor, or you're going to have to add some nutrients to that in order for it to continue to grow and be flavorful, because it only has so much to work with in the seed.
Yes. And then that's pretty much all for microgreens. They're great. And that's how they're going to work in the system. And the next thing that we're going to move on to is just harvesting. So the best way to harvest your plants with the Eden Tower, and actually there is some techniques that you can prolong the life of your plants. So instead of harvesting your plants every month, now you can have them for 2, 3, 4 months, and they can continuously produce. Mm-hmm. So the first set type of harvest is just take it all. So with lettuce, Swiss chard, all that, you just cut it right at the roots and you take the whole head. Some plants like lettuce, most of your leafy greens, if you do this, they will regrow. So the nicest thing is, because the roots are already developed, it'll take like 2 weeks to regrow a brand new head of lettuce instead of the full month. However, with each regrowth, the taste does change. So it does get a little bit more bitter. You can continue to do this as long as you want, but again, it gets really, really bitter. So we only like 2 to 3 times. 4 is really, really pushing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that is one way to harvest. And then the next way to harvest is the cut and come again method.
Yeah, and this is essentially you're going to be constantly harvesting from the plant as the leaves on the bottom are getting older and bigger. You'll just pick those off, and the plant will just continually grow and grow. And in this case, you can have plants that are going to last you multiple months, but they're steadily feeding you. So it's not like you have to stagger ahead every month, 1 week apart to make sure that every week you have more heads of lettuce. You just pick off leaves as you need it. Make sure you do it from the bottom, not from the top. And the same thing can happen though. After a while, the plant is going to eventually start to go to seed and it will start to go bitter. But you can get a lot more out of your plants than just harvesting at the end of the month and starting all over again.
Yeah, most of the time when people do the cut and come again method, they get rid of their plants not because of the taste, but more so they just tired of them, but they want to try like something new. And so that's the nice thing with that method. And that's the one that we do recommend, especially it's a lot easier to maintain. It's a lot easier to just plan out a garden. And then you're always going to have that continuous crop because you're just taking the mature leaves and then leaving the younger growth. And as with that, you're tricking it into thinking that it's young and it doesn't need to mature. It doesn't need to put any energy into seeding. It's just like, oh, like, I keep getting eaten. But yeah, those are the best ways to harvest.
Yes, pretty straightforward. One thing would be worth noting is if you plan to stagger growth, try and keep it all on the same layer, because when you harvest, you also are going to want to remove all the plant matter when you're done. You don't want to leave the old roots in there because they'll start to decay and then you can start to run into other issues with the system. So keeping a system clean is also removing anything that's been harvested, including roots. And because they kind of get entangled, you want to plant like one layer at a time so that you can pull all the roots in that layer out at once. Because it's tricky to just pull one plant out when it's entangled with all the others.
Yes, it's pretty impossible.
It is pretty impossible.
Yeah, and then in saying that, that's
Right,
a good
good
segue.
segue.
Good segue. The next thing is cleaning the system. So we kind of showed you guys how to set up, plant, take care of your plants. And now what happens when you harvest it all, how to properly clean it, and what do you do?
Yes, so one thing we're pretty proud about this design, we wanted something that would be a lot simpler to maintain, and part of that is going to be the cleaning. So at the very top, I'm just going to step out of frame quick. You kind of see in the background, so this is the light cover. And you'll notice that it's a little bit bigger than the tray. That's kind of handy because what can happen is you can use this essentially as like a drip tray. So you can just put the tray inside here. And then when you're going to take it, say back and forth from the wash station, it kind of keeps you from having to drip things all over the place. And then you basically just work your way layer from layer. So we'll start off, if you have no plants in the system, you're basically cleaned everything out. It's usually once every 6 months you want to be cleaning your system. You start up from the top. You're going to take your tray and you're going to try and move all the water to the drain of the water side, kind of like tilting it up. Make sure you drain all the water and then just put it inside that light cover or some other sort of drip tray if you can.
This bad boy.
This bad boy. And then you're just going to continue to do that through the whole thing, right? We get to the next layer, drain it, pull it off, clean it. And it's pretty straightforward, but using the light cover as sort of a drip tray is just a nice handy thing to do so you make less of a mess because it will inevitably drip a little bit.
Yes, and this part is really, really cool. So Ryan went above and beyond with the design and he allowed it. So now it's super simple if you actually have plants in it as you want to clean. So if you have plants growing in this layer and you want to clean the upper layer, how do you do that?
All right, so we're a little clunky because we have to do this all with the webcam. So at the very top, you basically have an empty tray with the light cover over top. So what that means is that you can actually just take this empty tray. And if we can imagine that this lid right here, so all of the plants, they snap into this lid. So that means I can just take out the lid, the plants will be attached. and then I can put it in that clean tray on top. And now I just do the same thing. I would drain this, I would clean out this tray, and then I would just do the same thing for this next one. Okay, this tray is now clean. I take the plants from the one below, and then I put them on the clean tray, and I just keep repeating that. Now, obviously, when it's clean, I'm not going to put it back on top. It would be off to the side. But that way, you can have a system full of plants, and you can still clean out the system if you have issues, and you wouldn't have to restart all of your growing. Is it a little more work? Yes, but it is possible, which is pretty unusual in vertical systems like this.
Yeah, and the nice thing is with that, no, I'm just gonna say the nice thing with that is you can just clean a layer at a time. You're not gonna have to clean your entire system, which again is really rare in vertical systems. As well as with that extra thing, it allows you to clean it when plants like are living, which I think is super, super cool, which is again, not common in other systems. And so that makes it a way easier. And then when you clean your system, we recommend is you can do it in the shower, bathtub, a sink. You're going to want to just with water, and yeah, just water. You're just going to want to scrub it down, make sure you get all organic matter. If there's any roots on, leaves stuck to it, you just want to get rid of all of that off the tray. And then what we recommend is having a spray bottle and mixing a solution with hydrogen peroxide and water. So 3 mils of hydrogen peroxide and then to a gallon of water. And then you're going to use that to sanitize your system or your trays. And this is just going to stop any bacteria, pathogens from spreading or even getting established on your system. And then you're going to like spray down the trays with that and then just rinse it with water and you're going to be good to go. It's going to be really, really clean. You can also use vinegar as well as a cleaning thing. You don't want to use anything chemicals. Kind of the same thing is if you can clean a fish tank with it, then you can clean your system with it. Yeah.
Don't want to use bleach. You don't want to use anything like that. And this is sort of the A plus, like best case scenario. This is what you want to do. You want to clean everything out. You want to sanitize it. You want to wash it out and set your system up. Because of its design, I would say if you kind of did a little bit of planning and like mixed your stuff, probably about a 15 to 20 minute job to clean the system top to bottom.
So how often do you have to clean the system or what's recommended?
So recommended is once every 6 months. Pretty forgiving, and then it would you'll kind of notice. So either you're going to get a buildup of debris, or you're going to start to find that the growth is getting stagnant, and a lot of it is because there's just lots of stuff in the water, and it's a good reset button. So we say 6 months because that's going to be about the time you're going to want to do it. If it so happens, maybe you've just got a lot of organic matter that's been building up in the system, your pH is high, or you just need to do a reset, you're having issues growing. Cleaning the system is usually the first place to start because it's the perfect reset button. So it's wipe everything out, start new, and you're going to be good to go again. If you have an outbreak or something like that, you'd want to clean your system as well. It's unusual, but if there is something and we're not able to treat it with some quick kind of remedies, whether it's like a small diluted solution of hydrogen peroxide or something like that, it will be clean your system and then get back at it again.
So after you have your system all cleaned up, the next thing is replant. This is pretty easy since you guys already did it because you had to clean the system. So the same thing is you want to use a brand new Rockwell plug or grow media. And then you're just gonna, again, here's your cup. You're just gonna plop it in there and then put your seed in, put a little water on the seed and then put it into the system. Super, super easy. And then again, you just continue the growth cycle.
Rinse and repeat. And so one thing for sure is like, this is sort of a verbal way that we're going through it. We're going to be doing a video that actually shows specifically how to clean the system, assembling of the system, planting, adding the nutrients. But it needs to be edited. Otherwise, it's just not going to be as good as we could make it. It's hard to do things in front of the webcam. So I guess just be ready for that. It's not like you have to learn how to clean the system by what I just said. There will be a video that walks you through it.
Yes, good point.
Yeah. I was like, man, I'd feel a little bummed out if that was my instructions to clean.
Yes. And then the next thing we're going to just touch up on is going to be troubleshooting. So what happens if your garden is looking a little sad, the plants might have, I don't know, little brown tips on them, they're looking droopy. Instead of panicking, what are the steps that you can do to kind of like determine what is wrong?
So fortunately, there's once you kind of know the pieces that need to be in place to grow, it's actually fairly simple to troubleshoot. And more often than not, it's something really simple that's causing your issue. So the most common simple one that we've run into is the system is out of water, or for some reason or another, the water is plugged or the hose is plugged. It's unlikely in this design, but it could happen. Something could happen, and the water's not getting to that tray. So you check if it's dry. Well, that's your problem. You don't have any water going to your plants. So first thing would be you check the water. It's in all the trays. Make sure your water level is good. You would check to make sure the pump is pumping. Little things can still happen. The way this is designed, if the connection wasn't good for the water, each water layer inside the pillars, it's not going to leak outside the system, but it would only get to that point and then it would drain back down through the system. And so that would mean you might have water up to a certain point, but not above that. And so then you would just have to make sure your connections are good, make sure that everything is sealed. But making sure there's water is probably number one priority.
Yes, the second thing you want to check if you have water running is going to be your pH. And like we explained before, is pH is kind of determines if their nutrients, if the plant can absorb the nutrients or not. So if your pH is outside of 5.5, 6.5, you can get away with 7, then your plants aren't getting any nutrients and therefore they're not, they're sick. They're not being able to grow. So with that is check the nutrients. You can either do up and down if it's out of whack, or you can just empty out the water and start all over again. It's up to you. pH up and down works great though.
It does. And typically high pH or low pH is symptom of another problem. High pH often is there's too much organic matter that's breaking down inside your system. So just about every single time we've had a high pH issue, it's because roots were left. There's a bunch of leaves that have fallen in the system, or a bunch of seeds that got dropped into the system. And when they start to decay, they start to raise our pH. So cleaning out your system can fix that, but adding more pH up, if you still have that organic matter in there, you're basically band-aiding, well, I don't know what you call it. You're band-aiding the solution. You're not actually going to ever fix it. You're just sort of covering it up for the period of time. Problem, band-aid, problem. That's right.
We just make up our own
Yeah.
sayings. Alrighty, and then the next thing after that, if those both look good, is most of the time it's going to be temperature. So it's either going to be the water temperature is too hot or too cold. If the plants are not growing at all, they're very stunted, I would say the water temperature is going to be way too cold and they're not being able to grow. If they're wilted, they're kind of looking blistery, it could be the water temperature is too hot, or just the ambient temperature is too hot for them. Like lots of the time with burnt leaves on lettuce, it's common. On lots of these other things, it's just browning around the edges of the leaf. It is caused because it's too hot. So you can either put a fan in there and just get that air moving, and that will help a lot.
Yes, and the most common place that we see things being too cold is when they have it in a basement, particularly say in a utility room, and the reservoir is just resting on the cold concrete. It draws all of the heat out of the reservoir, and then the water's basically the same temperature as your floor in your basement, which is way too cold. So you want to put something that insulates from the concrete if that's the case, even just a piece of plywood or cardboard layers, a few things like that. So it's not in that direct contact. If that fails, you might have to just introduce an aquarium heater, but usually you don't. But there's always a solution.
Yes. And then if you've checked all those, everything is a-okay, it looks good. I would say the next thing, and I would say a 99%, it would be you're going to want to check is your nutrients. And so with that is what we recommend is just actually taking out all the water and nutrient solution from your reservoir, putting in a little bit of water and running your system for a day just on water. And this is just going to clean out any of the nutrients. So the plants can have a time to reset. If it's too much nutrients they're getting and not enough, they can kind of just, again, just breathe, relax. And then you're going to add in, after a day of just cycling water, then you're going to want to add in your nutrient solution brand new. So whether it's in the vegetative state, whether it's in the blooming state, whatever stage your plants are in, that's the water that you're going to want to add to the reservoir.
But yeah, straight water helps kind of dilute it and get the system sort of reset back into place again. More often than not, you're never going to hurt your system by running straight water. You're just going to slow down growth because there's no nutrients, but it's not going to harm because there's too little nutrients, whereas too much nutrients or too rich can harm the plants.
Yes. And I believe that is all we have for today.
Yes, I think that's pretty much it. I guess one little thing to touch on in troubleshooting at the back of the manual, they'll go into a lot more about it. But it's that's, I guess, what I'm going to say is, like, when you're first starting off your system, that's typically when you're going to find problems that might be related to assembly. And then after you've been running your system for a while, the likelihood that something was wrong with the assembly isn't, so it just kind of makes the troubleshooting a little bit easier. But the manual has plenty to go into troubleshooting if, like, the pump isn't working, if the lights are giving you issues, if the timer isn't running. There's little quirks and stuff that it'll go into.
Yes. And so, yeah, I guess that would be the next thing, where to determine, if you go to the back of the manual, you can determine if it is a system problem or a plant problem, and then go from there.
Yes, yeah. So it's a clunky way of getting there, but
yeah, no, thank you guys so much. That is all we have. That is the third part. And like Ryan said, we are going to go into a lot more detail and make videos when it comes to cleaning the system, when it comes to planting, like all of this stuff. We just are in the midst of making them, editing them, and then we will send them your way. Hopefully we'll have it, well, we should have it done. We will have it done.
we'll have it done.
We'll have it done before we ship out the system, so you guys can watch it and get a better feel for everything. But just for live, that's what you guys are stuck with. But yeah, have a great evening. That is part 3. This is all the training, and you guys can grow a garden now effortlessly.
Yes, you know everything you need to know.
Yes. All right.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you. And then, yeah, have a great evening. Bye.